Born in 1892 to a strict Irish Catholic family in upstate New York, James Forrestal showed ambition from an early age. He worked for several newspapers before attending Dartmouth College and later Princeton University, though he would leave just shy of completing his degree, a fact that some suggest fueled his lifelong drive to prove himself. Forrestal began his career as a bond salesman on Wall Street with the firm William A. Reed and Company, later known as Dillon, Reed and Company. His rise was meteoric. By 1923, he was a partner. By 1926, vice president. And by 1938, at just 46 years old, he became president of the company. But as storm clouds gathered over Europe in 1940, his expertise would be needed for a far greater challenge. In June 1940, President Franklin D. Roosevelt appointed Forrestal as a special administrative assistant. Just 6 weeks later, he was nominated as the first Undersecretary of the Navy. With Secretary Frank Knox often serving as more of a figurehead, the tremendous responsibility of transforming the Navy into a global fighting force fell squarely on Forrestal's shoulders. Forrestal's Wall Street background proved invaluable. He was given special responsibility for procurement and production, essentially building the Navy's industrial base from the ground up. He revolutionized the Navy's contracting systems and mobilized American industry on an unprecedented scale. Under his leadership, the Navy grew from a modest pre-war force into a global powerhouse, capable of fighting across 2 oceans simultaneously. Forrestal was known as a compulsive workaholic, driven, pugnacious, and utterly dedicated. This dedication sometimes put him at odds with other leaders. In one famous incident in 1942, when Secretary of War Henry Stimson accused him of having a bad case of localitis for demanding more resources for the Marines fighting on Guadalcanal, Forrestal shot back, "If the Marines on Guadalcanal were wiped out, the reaction of the country will give you a bad case of localitis in the seat of your pants." Unlike many Washington officials who directed the war from behind desks, Forrestal believed in seeing conditions firsthand. He traveled multiple times to combat zones in the Pacific and Europe. He was present at major battles including Kwajalein in 1944 and would witness one of the war's most iconic moments at Iwo Jima. In February 1945, Forrestal had just landed on the beach at Iwo Jima when he saw Marines raising the American flag on Mount Suribachi. The moment so moved him that he turned to Major General Holland Smith and declared, "The raising of that flag on Suribachi means a Marine Corps for the next 500 years. So powerful was this symbol that Forrestal insisted on having the flag as a souvenir. This necessitated sending Marines to find a second, larger flag. The very flag raising that Associated Press photographer Joe Rosenthal would immortalize in perhaps the most famous photograph of the war. Forrestal became Secretary of the Navy in May 1944 after Frank Knox's sudden death from a heart attack. Now leading the Navy Department, he oversaw the final year of the war against Japan and the difficult transition to peace. Among his significant but often overlooked contributions was introducing racial integration in the Navy, a groundbreaking policy that predated the broader civil rights movement by decades. He also supervised the massive demobilization that followed Japan's surrender, navigating the complex shift from a war footing to peacetime operations. Forrestal understood the human dimension of this transition. He authorized a personal letter of appreciation to every discharged sailor, a gesture that meant the world to veterans like Maureen Corrigan's father, who kept his letter for a lifetime. The letter began, "I have addressed this letter to reach you after all the formalities of your separation from active service are completed. I have done so because, without formality, but as clearly as I know how to say it, I want the Navy's pride in you. which it is my privilege to express, to reach into your civil life, and to remain with you always. With the National Security Act of 1947, America's military establishment was reorganized, creating the Department of Defense. Despite having initially opposed full unification of the armed services, Forrestal's extensive experience made him President Truman's logical choice to become the nation's first Secretary of Defense. Forrestal immediately faced a cascade of international crises while trying to make the new defense structure work. The Soviet Union tightened its grip on Eastern Europe, blockaded Berlin in 1948, and communists advanced in China. Forrestal, deeply distrustful of the Soviets, became a leading voice advocating for a firm containment policy. His tenure was plagued by intense inter-service rivalry, particularly between the Navy and the newly independent Air Force, who battled over roles, missions, and shrinking defense budgets. Forrestal worked tirelessly to mediate these disputes, convening famous meetings at Key West, Florida, in March 1948, and at the Naval War College in Newport, Rhode Island, that August. Forrestal's position became increasingly precarious. He faced attacks from influential columnist Drew Pearson, who alleged everything from tax evasion to having owned shares in Nazi German companies. Pearson saw Forrestal as the most dangerous man in America and accused him of being too cozy with oil interests and having opposed the establishment of Israel for petroleum reasons. The final blow came when President Truman, upset with Forrestal's performance and perhaps aware that Forrestal had privately met with Republican Thomas Dewey during the 1948 election campaign, asked for his resignation. In March 1949, an exhausted and emotionally shattered Forrestal stepped down. His mental health deteriorated rapidly. Diagnosed with depression similar to battle fatigue, he was admitted to Bethesda Naval Hospital for treatment. Friends described him as paranoid, emotionally insecure, and plagued by insomnia. In the early morning hours of May 22, 1949, while alone in his 16th floor room, James Forrestal fell to his death from the hospital window. The official Navy Review Board concluded only that he died from the fall, but the consensus was that he had committed suicide. The tragedy sparked persistent conspiracy theories that continue to this day. Forrestal's legacy, however, endures. In 1954, the Navy launched the USS Forrestal, the world's first supercarrier, a fitting tribute to a man who had championed carrier battle groups. The James VIII Forrestal Building in Washington houses the Department of Energy, and his name graces facilities at Princeton and the Naval Academy. James Forrestal was a complex figure, a workaholic Wall Street financier who found his ultimate calling in service to his nation. He built the Navy that won the Pacific War, became America's first defense secretary at the dawn of the Cold War, and ultimately paid the ultimate price for his dedicated service. His story reminds us that behind the grand strategies and historical victories stand individuals who bear tremendous burdens, and that sometimes those burdens can become too heavy to bear. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this look at James Forrestal's life and legacy, please like this video and subscribe for more content on the forgotten figures who shaped our world.